Hey, this is me, Philip. I hope that you can hear me and see me and everything. This is a completely new setup for me. But yeah, I just made that thing that I was working on for 8 years actually launch, which is great. It was a long journey to be sure, and thanks everyone who helped me along the way, and thanks you for being over here. I see a bunch of in the chat. I see a bunch of familiar names. So thanks for being here. I promise that I won't be launching anything anytime soon on my own. Anyway, I just wanted to just have a moment and enjoy that this has launched. I want to go through, like, this is my agenda. Okay, I actually have it over here. I think, yeah. So the agenda of this launch party is, first of all, congratulations me, and you can now call me Mr. Game Developer. And also I would want to just go through, like, why that thing even happened, then what I've seen as a reception, both good and bad, and then if I have time, some of the not so great things that happened during the launch, and like how comically bad it was at times. And lastly, what's lastly? Oh yeah, and then if anyone has questions, I'm of course very happy to to answer. And thank you, Mark, for already jumping on the bandwagon, saying Mr. Game Developer. I should have it here. So this is what I see from you. Hello, everyone. Cool. So I just want to talk about the idea of eGamebook, and eGamebook is the underlying technology below Knights of San Francisco. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's this game, Knights of San Francisco, and it just was released to wait, I just want to show. Yeah. my phone is telling me that I'm live. Thank you phone. Anyway, so this is the game, and the idea was that I wanted to do something that I'd like to play, as you can see over here. And that's because I realized that on one hand I really enjoy complex worlds and things that are, a little more meaty and have some story and have something to really explore on one hand, and on the other hand I don't really have time and even just motivation to spend tens of hours trying to learn some way to experience the world, like the ideal. I mean, the usual thing that I say is Skyrim, right? I love Skyrim, the game. It features a huge world. You can do a lot of things in it, but you also have to lock yourself next to a computer and just do, just like learn a lot of stuff to really experience it. And so I thought maybe there is something in between, like there is something that can combine both having something complex and also pretty simple UI, and being casual and being able to play it on the phone. So that's that. Thanks everyone for calling me game developer. That feels good. All right, so that's the idea, right? So something I'd like to play and that I actually have time to play. And of course, that alone is not really enough to keep me going for 8 years. So the other idea that I had was authorship, and that needs a little bit of explanation. So I think currently games on all, like video games everywhere, are just much better in basically every aspect than ever before, right? They are more playable, they are nicer to look at, they are nicer to hear. Everything is much better than before. And I think the only thing that is a little worse now than it was before is authorship. Like even very indie games are products of many people, and probably some kind of a little bit at least of market study, or it's so expensive to make a game these days, and it requires so many people that you have to think about what's gonna like you don't risk enough, basically, right? So if someone comes and says like, I want to do this like crazy thing, then it's very like they either have to be very, very rich or crazy or have a lot of time, and so to do that. And so that's the unfortunate drawback and actually consequence of games being as good as they are now. Because if you look at games from the 80s or 70s, they were not as good, and they were therefore much easier for one person to build. And so from that past, it's like, how, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago now, but we still hear about like Sid Meier, who made Civilization and many other games, Railroad Tycoon, or Peter Molyneux, and like all these like names that were kind of, they basically made a game from scratch by themselves. At that time it was possible, and so you could go and play a game by one person, and you knew like what they are and who they are, and so on. And this is kind of like, it's not there anymore. I know that there are some people who are like on the like obviously famous, but it's but they're often what's the name of the guy who's doing who did the Japanese games with Metal Gear Solid and stuff like this, right? So like often the people who are famous now are famous because they started a game a long time ago, and it was a lot easier to do that. And so the idea of eGame Book is to be able to make something that's cool looking, people still want to play it, but it's also much easier to build by one person, and to give people, yes, Kojima, thank you. Yeah, Dr. Fu is here. I'm gonna talk about you, by the way. You're on the agenda, sir. All right, so yes, Hideo Kojima, thank you. And so I want to. I think there's a chance or possibility for people to just like build games that are weird and their own, and you can look at them and say, yeah, this is totally Filip Hracek's game, instead of this indie studio is like that. And this is something that books, for example, never lost. So you still get, you read a book by George R.R. Martin or by, I don't know, anyone else, Stephen King. You're not reading a book by a public, Game of Thrones Unlimited or something, crazy like that. You have one person. In movies, it's a little similar. Like it's very hard to have someone that you're like, oh, that's the author. Like Wes Anderson and David Lynch are classic examples, but I don't know. Like it's probably, if you go to watch a Marvel movie, you don't know who's actually behind it, and there's lots of focus groups and market research that that they use to make sure that everything is just fine, because risk aversion. All right, yeah, Tolkien, thank you. People are like, oh, he doesn't know any authors. Okay, okay. So that's the authorship idea. So reception, I launched on, I thought I would launch on Tuesday, and in the end it was kind of staggered launch by mistake. I can talk about it later, but everything launched by Wednesday midday, I think, and it was fine. In terms of numbers, it's still kind of a failure. Which is I knew that. Like I was very clear to everyone that this is not going. That I'm pretty sure this is not going to be something very successful in terms of numbers. But it's still like even. It's not even like expensive hobby unsuccessful. It's even worse than that. So I can't even, if it continues so like it is so far, the numbers like few people, then of course I can't, just one illustration is still more expensive than what I got from it, I think. So that's not working, but I'm hopeful still. And by the way, I'm no regrets. It's fine. I still love it, and I still am glad that I did this, and it's not lost time. It's just that if I consider doing it more than if I had to lose that much money and time every time I launch a new game, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, thank you. I'm not reading enough, but yes, thank you everyone. And also totally, I don't know what about Traveler's Tale. I need to check it out. Well, so reception in terms of numbers, not so great, but it's fine. I wish it was maybe it'll improve in the future. I have some still plans. I'm not saying this, I'm not over it. I'm still going to push a little more for people to write about it and stuff like that. But what I really love is the kind of the feedback that I get, and it's things like people like written feedback on Google Play. I don't know. I saw one feedback only on Apple for some reason. I don't know if they're not like Apple users aren't as motivated to write reviews, but on Google Play I see about, I don't know, 7 reviews, and they're all amazing, and it's really something that obviously makes me happy. So that's great. I also see some people are writing about it, which is also great. But this is why I'm really loving that Dr. Fu is here, because I really enjoyed his 2 streams, I think. I saw 2, maybe there was more. And if you don't know, Dr. Fu is like a Twitch streamer, it seems like. He's in the chat, so he can tell me if I'm wrong. And he just went and played the game, but he's playing it and talking to other people in the meantime, which is amazing. And I don't, by the way, if you've never played the game, there are 2 options. If you don't ever think you will want to pay for this game, then go watch that stream. But if you plan to play this game your own, don't watch that stream at first. Play the game yourself, because there's a lot of spoilers, and I think it's much more fun if you do it, if you see them yourself, and if you explore the game world yourself. But after that, if you've played through the game, go look at the streams. Dr. Fu, you can put your link in the comments if you want. I don't know. I think hopefully YouTube will not object to that. And why I'm mentioning this one is because like there are other streamers who are just kind of playing through the game, and just you can only see the text appearing, that's it. But what Dr. Fu does is that he's actually interactive and he's having fun. And I think it's not like either you're a great actor or you're actually having fun playing the game, even though you're playing it for the second time. And for me as the author, it's super validating. It's super great to see someone actually laugh at the jokes that I got there, or be amazed by the kind of the things that happen, because when I was working on it and when I was like, oh, I'm gonna code it so you can take any item and just try and fight with like a letter from your father and try to like smash people around you with the letter. I put that down in the game, and I was like, that will be so amazing. And then of course, as any author, I was like, well, maybe that's stupid. Like maybe that only I think that's good, or maybe only I would enjoy it. Everyone else thinks that's crazy. But then I saw your Twitch stream, and I was just like, you had fun with the exact things that I thought were great. So it was just fantastic. Like if even that was worth it. Seeing that some other people are having fun with it. Okay. Oh, there's a bunch of things. Play the game first. Yes. Play the game first, then watch the live stream. Thank you for having fun. Okay, so yeah, now I want to talk about some things that didn't work really well on my end, and that is the launch itself. So first, I was actually okay. First of all, why did it take so long? So obviously I'm not working on it full time, so that's why it took so long. It went through so many pivots, and I think for good reasons. Like if the game launched 3 years ago, it would be a totally different game, and it would probably be fine. But yeah, so that's the first thing. Second one, I'm working on it alone, and therefore some of the things are really hard for me. Like if you don't have a PM or a boss, it's very easy for anyone to just go and keep working on stuff and keep improving, right? I'm still not happy with the game. Like it should have been much better, but at some point you need to stop, right? So I had to I did all the wrong things when doing the game. Like if you read anything about game development, everyone says, hey, you should absolutely like take the easiest thing that you can implement and then slash off all the ideas that you have and just implement that, and that's your game, and instead I was like, ooh, it'd be cool if I could like slash off people's limbs and if I actually simulated the anatomy of everything and stuff like that. And I mean it worked in the end, but yeah, it was hard. And then the next thing is that I, at some point, like 2 years ago, I think, I had to say to myself, you know what? I need to be a product manager for this thing, as well as the engineer and writer. And I have to say to myself, like, no, this is too much. And I'll show you the features. I want to show you the drive folder or drive spreadsheet where I was being my own product manager. Yeah, here it is. So I stole this idea from some other very famous, but I don't remember the name now, very famous game designer. And it's basically listing all the things that I have an idea of doing, and then going through them and saying, how much do I think it will cost me in terms of time? And remember, I am not working on this full time. So this is the cost of in days of, like, for example, infighting. I wanted to have infighting in the game. So like you would go to a room and you would see two orcs fighting with each other, and you can be just like, well, I don't care. This actually happens a little bit in the game already. Like if you can confuse someone and they will fight their friends. But I wanted for this to be like without you doing anything. And I thought it would be on the scale of 0 to 10, 7 cool. and then I have the ratio, and then I said, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. But this is all the things that I did do, right? And I had like a little spreadsheets here, as you can see, that basically told me like when do I expect things to do. So if I said I am actually going to yeah, unlock some cool things through deeds, and I started today, that would take me 3 days, which basically means that I would probably be complete by May 16th, because again, I'm not working every day on this, and yeah, it's complicated. And then after that I could have yeah, reactions by NPCs, which means like NPCs should react to the state of the world more than they currently are. Anyway, that's something that I want to do in V2, so I'll just do V2 material, you know. And yeah, and I could always sort things so that I could know what I should be working on next. So yeah, so that's my process, and without it, trust me, it would not launch. This game there's so many things that I can do. All right. Okay, yeah, Confuse is one of my favorites. Dr. Fu says it's one of his favorite moves. I'm glad, because it kind of shows how your enemies aren't as mechanical as you might think. You know, they are actually planning ahead and stuff like that. I don't know. It's fun. All right. Still haven't finished the game. Almost at the top. Cool. You'll be there quick. And I'm glad that it's not just, some people will just play through it in one go, and I've seen at least 2 people give me like bad marks, only 4 stars, which is still great, but saying like, hey, this is too short. And I know that's one of the reasons I made it, but yeah, I guess I'm glad that there are some people who are like, oh, okay, so I can't actually do it in one go, because I have other things to do, I guess. Which is cool. Ink is great. Yes, Ink is actually, so I implemented a subset of Ink. I'm sorry, I can't read your name, but you are correct that Ink is one. If you don't know about Ink, Ink is this. It's a system and a kind of a programming language or markup for creating interactive stories. It's way more. It was used for Heaven's Vault, 80 Days, and Sorcery, so it's kind of you know, it's been used out there. It is more for less dynamic systems, I think. You know, it's more about like, hey, I just wanna, for example, have a conversation with someone, and that conversation is probably not going to be super dynamic. Okay, it still can be, but like, yeah, not as dynamic as, for example, combat in Knights of San Francisco. So I realized, okay, you know what? I'm gonna just steal one of the, or 2 of the ideas in this markup, and so Ink is partly implemented inside Knights of San Francisco or e-game book. Yeah, there's a trivia for you. Ink is very good. If you want to try and start doing something like this, I really recommend it. By the way, what's it called? I have a game out there that I did in Ink for my kit, if you don't know, but I'm trying to find it now. Sorry, I need to... What? Oh, Ink. Dart, yeah. Yeah, so it's... If I remember correctly... Yeah, alright. So it's this guy. This is all made in ink. I'm gonna put it into the chat here. Hey Vyacheslav, nice to meet you. This is the game that I made for the kit, and it's as you can see, it's inspired by Knights of San Francisco in the way that it kind of shows text by sentence, and it's I can obviously say I'm Captain Eli, and it's for a 6-year-old kid, and it's not finished, but I had a lot of fun, and it let me play a little bit with ink and with like what you can do with it. All right, so yeah, this was fun because I could be very 6-year-old kid, like, like, oh, welcome to Secret Base 7. Your giant robot is ready to go. And you should see the kid when he was reading it, and he was like, okay, my name is blah blah blah. Your giant robot is ready to go, and then like you can say like, you only have a giant sword. Do you want to add a jetpack? It's fun. So yeah, I wish I had more time to do things like that. Yes, that's the one, the giant robot one. Anyway, so yeah, so that was the first thing that didn't work so well, was the idea of me just not being a product manager enough to make things go. But yeah, it worked in the end, but I had to create a spreadsheet, and then I was like, okay, so and then of course the pandemic happened, blah blah blah, and then when I was almost ready to launch, there was this thing with App Store where Apple had this terrible UI thing where they would just fail to one of the internal systems in App Store Connect, which lets you launch games, was not working, and it would just not tell me why. It would just be like, hey, contact our support. And so I was contacting support, and nobody knew what was going on. And then someone was like, hey, did you check this part, which was like completely different part of the App Store Connect UI. And I did, and I saw that there is a problem there, and fixed the problem, and 5 minutes later I was able to launch. But of course by that time I missed like 2 windows. So that was the first thing when I was like, Apple. And then when I was almost, it was like literally midnight between Monday and Tuesday this week, I said, okay, I'm gonna launch, right? So on Apple I was all ready, and it just said like, click here to launch your game. So I was like, okay, I'm clicking here to launch my game, perfect. And then I went to Google Play, the console that lets you launch for Android, and I knew that when I click somewhere, it gives you like this scary warning that says like, are you ready to roll out to like your global audience, and and a big red button or whatever, blue button. And I was like, oh, okay. So obviously before the launch date, I was not clicking it, and then on midnight I clicked it, and instead of just going out, it was like, oh, okay, so now we're in review. And I was like, what? And so and yeah, I realized that I should have. This is my fault, because I should have read like a manual and the documentation around it, and maybe like spend some time talking to other people who've launched things recently, because a long time ago I launched a few apps the same way, and when I clicked it, it was there. It was like there was no other things to worry about. And this time I like already had the game in beta testing. Everything was going smoothly, so I thought I just click it and it's gone, it's done, and everything is launched. But no, it just started saying like, yeah, you're in review, and then I went googling like is it, how long does it take? And some people, and I also asked on Twitter, and a lot of people were like, well, be prepared to spend 2, 3, 4 weeks in review. And fortunately, I guess because I've already launched things in the past and because the game already was in beta for a long time, or internal testing actually, I think that's why it only took about 24 hours. But it was still a little not great when you wanted to launch, that time. Yeah. All right. Okay, so first question. Actually, yeah, we're at questions time. So in the end, just to finish all this, it all went okay. There are some, people writing about it. You can if you search for Knights of San Francisco, you can find at least a few people around the world, actually, even in Italian and other languages that write about Knights of San Francisco. And yeah, and as I said before, the numbers aren't great, but like at least a few tens of people in the world were moved enough to actually buy the game and play it, and a lot of them said very good things about them, and that makes me happy. So, and thanks for joining me in this celebration, by the way. Yeah. So questions. How do you manage the personal project with full-time job? Good question, Mitesh, because this is something that I, especially before the kid, obviously I was just doing this like during the weekends and stuff like this. Now we have a kid, as I said, 6 years old. So it's a lot harder. But I was able to, well, there's still times, when you have time even with a kid. But more importantly, I was able to talk to my employer and tell them, hey, can I get 20% less money and everything, and just not work 1 day a week for you? And they were great enough to say yes. So on Fridays, that's my day when I don't work for my employer, and instead I don't get paid, obviously, and instead I work on this. So this is Fridays. The problem with that a little bit is like when you have a Friday for yourself, you tend to not work on something because there's all these other things that you need to figure out, like, oh, I need to clean my car or whatever, and you kind of, you have a free Friday, right? So it's less than a day a week, but it's still much better than nothing. So it's great. Yeah, Philip. Yes, Philip. Nice to see you again, Philip. He's saying it would be cool to go deeper into the project management stuff. I can do that for sure. I'm not sure I'm the right person to give any ideas, to be honest. But yeah, for sure. I can do that, or I can write it down. I also want to, by the way, yeah, I have. I should write a post-mortem and I should do all these things. I just want to have a little bit of a breather and not thinking about the game. But yeah, I should definitely do that. Yeah, and thanks for, it's so great to hear things like that. When can we expect a sequel or at least some expansion? Well, I said this in the beginning. Like if the numbers are like not great, then it's not even in the territory of expensive hobbies. It's in the territory of like really like throwing money away and time. So I'm not, even though I really would love to do another, and I have ideas for sequels. I'm not sure that I would do that, but I still, again, I'm hopeful that things will be better when people have the time to kind of review things, and maybe the thing gets featured or something like that, and then if things get to a point where it's only an expensive hobby, or maybe even the money and the time comes back to me, then I would be super glad to do this game. And but now with all the things that I've had to build from scratch, they are now done, and all I need to do is add the things that I wanted to have but don't have, and more importantly, work with the setting and do another interesting story in that setting. Currently playing through and love it. Thank you. Have you ever thought about something like this but multiplayer? A lot of people suggested that. I also had that idea. The thing is that it would have to be a completely different underlying technology, because you would have to figure out how to do this in a way that can be real time. Right now you can, as a player, you can pause anytime. You can just not click the skull, and that's that's solved for you. So I don't know how that would work. I also kind of tried to make it so that it's similar to like reading a book. I went to, you probably can tell, but the whole style of the UI looks more like a Kindle app or something, or a New York Times app, than a normal game. And this is because I want you to be able to just kind of like lounge in an area with other people and play this game without losing your context, right? If you play almost any other game, you're like this, and nobody can talk to you. But if you're reading a book, you can still be like, hey, what's going on? And you can. So the multiplayer, from my perspective, is more about like you can like what Dr. Fu is doing in his live stream, or you can do in your lounge room or whatever, if you have something like that. Hopefully, as the pandemic ends, you can go with your friends somewhere, and if you have like time to hang out, I imagine you could just be like, yeah, let's do this, and this is fun, and let's read it together. This to me is more interesting as an experience than having this online multiplayer. I don't know. Okay, a lot of currently, okay, 20% has probably been a good investment for your boss, because I would say gained traction on Fridays. Yeah, no, I'm telling you, I think if I didn't have this project, I would be a lot more out of touch with for example, the development community. So it's really was a great career move. Have you considering deploying it as a proper platform? Yeah. So lots of people are asking, like, hey, so you obviously made a game engine. Is this like a platform now? Is it the game engine that I can use? And this was the original idea of eGamebook, was to like create an open source game engine for people to use. And I'm like, it's partly there. If you go and if you search GitHub for eGamebook, you will find the source code for that I'm still using for this game. But it's I realized that I don't want to put myself into a position of an open source game engine maintainer, because that would be like, I'm not doing this to be open source famous, and I'm not doing this for other people to be able. I mean, it sounds egoistic maybe if I say it that way, but I'm happy for people to use the code, and it's out there. But I know from experience that if you like promote something too much in the open source community, it almost is like as if you're saying I'm going to help you with everything, and I'm going to be the maintainer, and you know, it's on me if anything breaks. And I'm not going to do that. Like, if you're brave enough to use someone else's code and especially my code to do something, then you're welcome to. But I'm not going to be a maintainer. Maybe like if this is like super successful, I can imagine doing that. But no, it's taking a lot of time and effort to do something like this. Yeah. Thanks for the congratulations, and it is a great feeling to do this. Yeah, and exactly like Dr. Fu's again. Like I'm basically, this is an ad for Dr. Fu's live stream, but this was another thing that was a validation, where he was able to have fun and talk to people on the live stream and read comments on the chat, and just it was fun to watch. And Dr. Fu did voices and everything, so it was in some ways even more fun than if you just read the book, for example. Did you write tests? Yes, absolutely. I write actually. This is a little like maybe too much in depth in terms of development, but the cool thing about this, the underlying technology, is that every situation it's like an immutable state thing, where you go from one world state to another world state through actions, and then you can, every basically moment in the game can be serialized and put into like JSON, for example, and then you can load it later, or you can score it and stuff like this. This is how I do the AI. So the monsters and the NPCs are all like looking at future versions of the world and thinking, okay, so if I do this, what's it going to be like? What is the world going to be like for me? You know, so the way I do testing, there's definitely unit tests and stuff like this, but one of the cool things is that I can do fuzzy testing. So I can start the game and tell the the program that is testing the game, I can tell it, just play the game for 24 hours straight, and just, you know, like if you die, start from the beginning or load a thing, like just do it for as long time as possible. And because I have asserts everywhere, it will actually crash and tell me why whenever there's any kind of, I mean, not every kind of mistake. Of course, testing will not uncover some pretty embarrassing problems that the game still has, but it will at least uncover all the, like, a big part of the crashing things that can happen to you. And it's been very useful, because sometimes, you know, game code is very gnarly and very hard to reason about. It's always, you know, not great. Games are like that. And so it was great to be able to just make a change and make sure that the unit tests still pass, make sure that the static analysis still pass, but then also make sure that if a monkey plays this game for 300 years, it still won't get to a crash. So yeah, it's great. Cool. Did you? Yes. Okay. Yeah, Bob Nystrom is amazing. Bob Nystrom is another team member, and he's doing a lot of roguelike development, and he's been a big inspiration for me. So yeah, Dart has been really good for me in terms of development of games, because it's, you know, on that level of it's nice to work with, but it's also very kind of strict and doesn't let you do a lot of funky stuff. How much do you like the feedback directly through the app? I send a bunch. I will send more. Yes, I love it. I was thinking about removing the feedback button. It was there. I initially added the feedback button in the game just for beta testing, so that beta testers were able to give me feedback more frequently and often and easier. But I let it be there for the launch, and I think it's great because I get about one feedback a day since the launch, where people are like, hey, this seems weird, and then I'm like, oh, okay. And it's obviously easier for them to do it that way than to go to like I don't know, a feedback form somewhere or something like that. So it's great, and I'm definitely grateful for any feedback. And by the way, it tells it in the feedback form, but whenever you send a feedback, it will also send your current state with it. So I'm able to, like, if you say, hey, this happened, I'm able to reload what happened on my end, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then I can step through it and see, oh, this is why it happened. So it's very, very helpful. Yes. So since I started playing this game, I wasn't able to get the idea of an MMO out of my head. Basically, a player-given dynamic world with economy and collaboration. Am I insane? Yes, you're insane, but not uniquely insane. I think a lot of people have that idea, and nobody has quite cracked it. There's definitely there was multi-user dungeons in the 80s and 90s that are kind of like that. I think kind of like what you're describing, but it's such a cool idea that I think will come back, but I don't know how. I just anytime you add online to anything, it becomes exponentially more hard to implement, especially if you are thinking about things, not even just technically, but also in terms of social stuff. Like, if you allow people to freely do things and say things to other people, then you have a problem, because I don't know if people realize, but like there are some really I know that people realize that internet has some really bad actors, but as someone who's working in a company that kind of deals with that a lot, I think I'm more very aware of it than many people. So yeah, whenever you open stuff up for the public, you'll get some really nasty people there, unfortunately. And I'm not just talking about like Nazis. I'm talking about really nasty people. And Nazis are nasty enough, right? But like, yeah. Phew. Okay, no crashes for me so far. Thank you. Thanks for that. New school MUD would be amazing. Yeah, simple 1 to 4 player. I like it. And yeah, multi-user dungeons, such a great concept. I'm reading, if you don't know, Digital Antiquarian. This person, philfred.net, is writing basically a history of gaming since the 70s, and I want to put it here just so you know. I've really enjoyed reading it, and it's my favorite way to go to sleep. But table of contents, maybe. Yeah, so you can see he started in 2011 with things like the Oregon Trail, and then he goes through all the things, include like Ultima, robot war, all these old things, and he always is very, very thorough and talks about many things that I wasn't aware of, and I wasn't alive when I don't know, like these things were written and released, but it's still, I still kind of know about Zork, for example, or Ultima, of course. I played Ultima 8 when I was a kid. Yeah, super super nice. Really really recommend it. Dark Souls handles messages elegantly, but yeah, people still find ways to send crazy messages. Yeah, that's the, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to be in that business, but I'm. It's, if you do it right, it can be obviously super super good for just great. Oh, so I'm sorry. Dr. Fu is asking if there is a way to display some of the stats of the, I guess, of the game. So I was trying to keep the UI, as you can tell, the UI as simple as possible. And so, for example, the stats, and therefore it kind of opened me to more interesting simulation, I think, that would normally be possible, right? So if you have stats like hit points, for example, then you get, then you just have one number, right? And that's great because you can show the number and you can show the health bar or whatever. For me, or in Knights of San Francisco, health is actually not just one number. Health is like all your body parts have some capability of being hurt until they break, and they can be cut, they can be blunted, they can be cleaved off, right? And then also your body parts are marked with different things. So for example, legs are mobility body parts. So if someone slashes off both your legs, you lose mobility, right? If someone slashes off or disables one of your legs, then you lose a big part of your mobility. Same with like eyes are also a body part, and they are vision. So if someone pokes both your eyes, then you lose vision. But I also made it, and I'm not using it enough, but I made it so that if you, for example, imagine a monster that doesn't have eyes here, but they have eyes here and here, right? So the underlying system is made so that if you chop off their heads, then they're blind. So it literally, it like tracks, like, oh, okay, so this monster was lost this body part, and oh, by the way, this body part is attached to another body part, and that body part is a vision body part. So we should update the monster's vision capabilities now, right? So there's no, and so you could visualize this by basically every monster and every NPC and the player having their anatomy shown in full, and show all the connections, and what are the vital body parts. So I made it so that only the head and the torso are vital, but otherwise you can do anything, and the creature still lives in the that's a simplification, obviously, but so why so I think if I went so far as to like explain how this works in the game with UI, then suddenly we have a very different feel to the game, because now you like see all those things, and I wanted this to be more visceral. Like you understand if you have a monster and the monster has one eye here, that if you cut off the hand, then it won't see, at least on that eye. So so that was like my thinking about it. But yeah, okay, yeah, there was a lot of questions. Yeah, return to Zork. Yes, yes, yes. Are you planning to change? Geezer, come on. Are you planning to change the map UI so you can only go one space at a time, or leave it as is where you can go anywhere? Yes. So the map UI can go anywhere, and it just tracks. And again, it's more complicated on the inside. It actually tracks where you're going and through which rooms you're going. But it's to the user, it's just click somewhere where you can possibly go, and you just go there. You know, the time is still tracked and everything, but you, from your perspective as a player, you're there. And I made it so because I had obviously a version where you just had to go one by one. And it wasn't fun. It's you know, especially if you're going, and I made it so that you go a lot of like, oh, I want to go up, and now I want to go this way. If you had to go through each room, and most of the rooms really don't change that much, and if they did, that would be like total chaos. I didn't think that's worth it. But maybe in a future one, I want to do a game where you're part of a battle, like a huge battle. And so in that case, I think it makes more sense to be more of a like, okay, you're you can't like just cross the whole battlefield to the other side every time, right? Because the battle would be dynamic, so it would be changing. All right. Yes. Trying to keep up here. I'm pretty sure this before, but the way the text animates is just so satisfying. Thank you. This is one of those things where you have to spend a lot of time trying things until it kind of clicks and looks good. So I had that idea maybe, you know, a year and a half ago, and I implemented it and then I iterated on it a lot actually, until it was like that. So thanks. Merely a flesh wound. Yes, exactly. That's what I want. Like I think I wanted to have a Black Knight. If you're familiar, Craig is obviously familiar with the Black Knight from Monty Python. That's definitely possible to have in Knights of San Francisco. Yeah, a ton of things does go on behind the scenes, and it feels like a waste to never get to see all of it in action. That's true. And yes, I should do a behind the scenes video for sure. Yeah. It's one of those things where I kind of went against what people, you know, another thing where every game designer will tell you, like, if it's in the game, you have to make sure that people know about it, right? Like, don't hide stuff. And there are only a few games that people know about that go against this common knowledge. One of them is Dwarf Fortress, for example, right? So like you can't really see what's going on behind it, and I like that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely. It's like sometimes there's an MMO game called Age of Conan, and I don't play it, but I know about it because it's the classic example where they did a system in the game that was super interesting, like conceptually super interesting. Basically a Maslow hierarchy of needs for everything, every creature in the game. So they made sure that like every crab is first like needs to survive. Then if it knows that it can survive like attacks and stuff like that, it needs to eat. And if it knows that it can eat, it needs to procreate. And if it knows that it can procreate, well, crab probably that's it, right? But like for humans, it would be self-expression and communication and stuff like that. I don't remember the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Let's search for it. Maslow hierarchy of needs. I'm talking about this. Right? So they actually went and in this game, Age of Conan, they implemented it for every single creature in the game, and I think it's amazing that they did this. But nobody cared. Nobody ever found out about this. Like the game was running with this. The game, like all the crabs were like, you know, doing things according to this psychology, Maslow hierarchy of needs. But nobody cared. Nobody knew it. It wasn't visible. So it is as if it wasn't there, and so they scratched it. They had to like delete that code and make it more obvious to everyone, right? So, but I still love that kind of stuff. So I just went with that. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Congrats on the launch. Yes, if you slash it like they do usually fall on the ground, and I think that's implemented. But have you played Dwarf Fortress? This is probably from before I was talking about it, but yes, I played Dwarf Fortress. I of course suck at it, but it's great. I just love it. The fact, I mean, if you don't know Dwarf Fortress, please go and watch a video on YouTube. It's so hard to play that if you're not really time rich, you will not be able to play very well for a few months. But there are people who are like streamers of playing Dwarf Fortress, and even before you go and watch some stream, DF Stories is one of my favorite things of all time. So that these are stories that happened in Dwarf Fortress for people who are playing it, and they are made into like actual stories. So people will often add a little more flair to the story than was actually in the game, because the game itself, if you don't know what Dwarf Fortress looks like, now it looks more. Dwarf Fortress looks like this. Most of its existence, it looked kind of like this, right? So yeah, but anyway, just reading some of those things is amazing, and it gonna also shows you the crazy things that you can do in the game, because it's all simulated. It's all great. Cool. Okay, I need to. Wow, there's so many things. I wasn't. Okay. How many different songs do you use throughout the game? I think there's about 10 or 12. Yeah. I basically said to myself that I'm very proud of the fact of the audio in the game, which is two things. There's no diegetic sound. Which means some people were telling me like, hey, you have a game, it needs to have diegetic sound. What that means is if you go to like the trader's shop, you should be hearing a murmur of people buying something, and if you go to battle, you should hear the clinking of swords or stuff like that, And I thought, and I started implementing that, and then I realized, what am I doing? This is not that. Like, this is too direct and too kind of shallow. I want this, if you're reading an actual book, you're not reading the book and hearing, the Hogwarts murmur when Harry Potter is walking through Hogwarts, right? And so you shouldn't need that in a game, especially a game that kind of tries to look like a Kindle app. So I'm proud for resisting the urge to conform to like the expectation of having diegetic sound everywhere, and it's not there. So that's one. And the second one is all you can hear is the music, right? And there are some things that I would change and maybe will, but for sure another expectation for fantasy games is you have to have medieval music, and so I went and I was like, I was thinking about it, right? Like okay, so I should have medieval music, but then I realized why. First of all, it's in the future. The Knights of San Francisco is not medieval Europe. So second of all, why? Like it doesn't need to really, like, do you really need to hear the medieval music? Some people I guess do, but like I don't know. I remember reading all of Terry Pratchett, hearing How We Be the whole time. I was listening to How We Be, who's like an electronic artist, so very much not fantasy soundtrack, and it was great. I didn't need a flute to feel like I'm inside a fantasy world. So I thought, I'm just doing that. So I just took songs that I really liked, that I could license, and that are that are not medieval at all. Like there's jazz, there's electronica, there's punk, and you can hear it right now. Like the background music, that's playing, that I'm talking over, frustratingly, I'm sure that's the music from the game. Ah, okay, Dr. Fu is way ahead of me. Yes, 7 to 8 only. It's possible. Yeah, and it's epidemic sound, correct. So if you have a game, or if you have a stream and you want to use music that's really good, I can recommend Epidemic Sounds. I was shopping for music a lot. I was actually almost ready to buy a track from an actual, like I mean, obviously all, even Epidemic Sounds are they are actual artists, but like from a famous person, relatively famous in Los Angeles, and then I found Epidemic Sound, and I think the tracks are amazing, and it's very reasonably priced. Cool. Yeah, Age of Conan, man, like I never knew about this game, but that's the thing. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this is the kind of lifelong tension between, I want to do stuff like this, and on the other hand, would it be fun? Like there's so much things that would be so interesting to do, or are so like interesting to think about, but they aren't fun. My favorite anecdote is Ultima Online had basically every monster, everything in the game could level up and was basically on the same level as every player, right? So you could go to the forest and meet a bear who recently like killed another bear, and so they're leveled up and were much stronger. And this all would just like happen all the time. So the whole Ultima world would be like all these, from rabbits to bears to dragons, everyone would be leveling up and fighting each other, and like that's so interesting to me. It's like I really like the kind of lived-in world idea, and I hope it's also showing in Knights of San Francisco. But they had to scratch it again, unfortunately, because it wasn't fun. Because what happened was that players started complaining that they are being killed by rabbits. And the reason they were sometimes being killed by rabbits is that, like there would be wolves and rabbits, and the wolf population would like obviously feed on rabbits. And but sometimes the rabbit, like most of the rabbits would be killed, but sometimes one of the rabbits would fight back or something, and they would win against the wolf, which would level them up. And so like there was small small chance of this happening, but because it was happening all the time, all these like little fights between wolves and rabbits, that you would get like a small part of the population of rabbits would be really, really leveled up rabbits, basically really buff, like killer rabbits, and then they would just be like there, feeding on grass, being really buff, and then a player would come and they'd be like, oh, easy stuff, I can just kill a rabbit and have their hide or whatever, and then they would start slashing the rabbit, and the rabbit would kill them in one go, because by then they would be like level 20 rabbit who survived 700 wolves. So like a stupid level 1 human would be like no match for it, right? So interesting, really interesting stuff, but unfortunately not fun for the player, so needed to be dropped. Yeah, I remember the thing in DF when the cats got drunk or something. Yeah, that's another one. I don't want to. If you want, go to YouTube and search for Dwarf Fortress cats, and the programmer of Dwarf Fortress explains exactly what happened when they had this. They found a bug, and it came from this thing. Yeah. All right. Hey Philip, thanks for the great photo. Thank you. Yeah. So sounds like another scene from Monty Python. Exactly. Yeah. What's it called? Killer Rabbit. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for joining me. I hope that at some point I can meet all of you in person and actually, drink something with you. This is coffee, by the way. But thanks again. I'm really happy that this went out. I'm really happy that at least some of you have a good time with the game. And I really hope that I'm able to continue doing this in the future. And again, I have some ideas that I really like, that are interesting. And I just need to make sure that they're also fun. Cool. I'll slowly but surely stop the stream, but yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Oh